welcome back to the Movie Marketing and Distribution podcast powered by Usher U. My name is Alex Stoltz. I'm a media and entertainment strategist and producer, and as well as hosting this show, I run a company called Future of Film. So this, as regular listeners know, is a show where we explore the latest trends, technologies and tactics in the business of connecting audiences with the content they love. And I'm very excited about today's conversation. It's with Brandon Purdie, who is Executive Vice President, Global Head of Theatrical Distribution at Angel Studios, who are behind titles such as The Chosen and, of course, Sound of Freedom, starring Jim Caviezel and Mira Sorvino. That grossed an incredible, well, it says here actually 183 million domestically this year. I checked it yesterday. I think it's gone up. I think it might be up like 187, maybe 186.
We're 184 domestic, 250 globally.
Oh, wow. Okay. It's just extraordinary. And I think that puts you domestically number 10. It's top 10 gross, number 10 in the top 10 charts this year for all films. So it's an extraordinary success and something which we really want to dive into in this conversation. A bit more about Brandon. Brandon's been obsessed with bringing inspiring films to audiences across his career, and from originally tearing tickets and sweeping floors at his local theatre. He went on to managing a regional theatrical chain, and then went to set up Purdie Distribution to empower filmmakers and bring their stories to audiences across the United States. Brandon, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us. As I said, I'm really excited about this conversation. But I want to start off just asking about that first job in the industry. I'm always curious about how people get into the industry, and it's great to always hear about people who've really started. Well, you started at the coal face, as you might say, of cinema exhibition. Tell me about that first experience.
Yeah, so I was 14 years old. I grew up in a small town called Pleasant Grove, Utah. There was a little, old kind of, for that side of the town, a movie palace. It felt like to me as a kid, anyways. And it was the Alhambra, and I would go there all the time. And then I started working in cinemas at 14, and just entry level, kind of doing that. And then pretty much from then until now, that was 14 years old when I first started working in cinemas. From then until now, I've either been distributing films theatrically or working in cinemas for that pretty much my entire life. So I'm as much in love with the cinema as I am with film and the power of what film can accomplish, as much as what I feel like the important part that cinema plays in our world, especially now.
Amazing. What, if you can remember, was the first film, maybe not the first film you saw, either the first film you saw in the cinema or the first film which was changed your world?
Yeah. Oh man, my family, we went to the movies almost every Sunday growing up. So huge part of everything good and nostalgic. A lot of my memories, and my dad's an actor, so a lot of my memories kind of are flooded with cinema and film. I remember watching Goonies and being just blown away by that movie as a kid. I remember sitting in the Sierra Theater in Orem, Utah, and watching Little Mermaid. I was a little bit older, but just remembering it's a big giant movie palace. It's one of the original Disney houses in Utah. So it's just this big, beautiful historical theater. I called so many.
Yeah.
So many I can't even think about it. I can't even pick up one, but a lot of different films. And I grew up going to every summer, every week, a movie series of throwback films. and I would, spend a lot of time in my local town as a super young kid at the cinema. So I suffered some abuse as a kid. And so for me, the cinema was like this place where I could make sense of my kind of confusing world as a younger kid, around 8 or 10. And so I'd ride my bike down there. It's kind of idyllic little town, and would ride my bike and watch a movie and be gone for the day. And, back then my parents weren't even sure where I was. They just knew that I was all right. So yeah, a lot of time at the cinema, a lot of time with movies.
Nice. Yeah. Getting some Stranger Things vibes from which is great as well. That's lovely to hear. Let's fast forward a minute or two to Angel Studios, and tell me about Angel Studios and how you personally became involved and looking after theatrical campaigns.
Yeah, so Angel Studios is a company, studio that's its mission is to tell stories that amplify light, and it works really like I've never experienced in my entire 20-something years in distribution. It works with the audience in a way I've never seen. But in my career, I had gotten to a point about a year ago where I had been just beating the table and talking about how we care too much about what we think as distributors and our ego, and we care too much what the industry thinks, and we care too much about this is a Brandon Purdie view, not officially Angel view, but we care too much about what the filmmaker wants or whatever, and the whole production side of it. But so little is done to have an ongoing conversation with the audience. And at the end of the day, I really feel that distribution is the process. Theatrical distribution is the process of the movie being handed over, the baton being passed from the filmmaker to the distributor, and the distributor to the audience. And then the film becomes the audience's. So when I saw what Angel was doing with their crowdfunding and in working with The Chosen, the work they did with The Chosen, I just kept thinking, like, I've just never seen anything like this. Luckily, they're based in Provo, Utah, and I grew up in Utah, and I had been watching what they were doing. I was friends with the three founders, the Harmon brothers, Jeff Harmon and Neil Harmon and Jordan Harmon. And we had ongoing conversations. It's not a huge film market here in Utah, so you kind of know everybody. And we had worked on projects together and different things. And so we had been talking about doing theatrical work, what that would look like for a while. But when I saw that they did their first Chosen, like 2 episodes of The Chosen in theaters, and I saw the results, it just blew me away. And so we started having more and more conversations about it. And I looked at the pay it forward model that they had going that had really changed their streaming shows and had kind of changed the game for The Chosen and for other shows that they had on their platform. And I thought, if there's a way to take the crowdfunding, the equity funding, this conversation with the audience and move into the theatrical space, going to be unstoppable. So a couple years ago at CinemaCon, I was sitting with the chief distribution officer here at Angel. His name's Jared Giese. And we were talking about all the possibilities of what could happen if we did theatricals. I'd never imagined that like a couple years later, we'd be getting written up in the trades as being snubbed by the Golden Globes for not being nominated for their cinematic achievement category. So it's super exciting. And back in February, they brought me on, and I sold my business, and I joined here full time. And just no looking back. We've done His Only Son, and then we did Sound of Freedom, and then After Death. And then now The Shift that's in theaters and preparing for a really aggressive slate next year. I think the thing, the pillars of kind of what makes Angel unique in my view. from my experience, is number one, that conversation with the audience. The most completely committed company I've ever worked for to their mission, Amplifying Light. They are not varying from that, and they are very committed. And I find that really reassuring and exciting in the entertainment space to kind of know who you are and going after it. Then the kind of the genesis of Angel, like where it comes from and where it gets its strength, because it just kind of showed up on the scene in people's minds with Sound of Freedom for a lot of the industry. And you see that happen from time to time, and then you never hear anything from that studio again. Like they just had a good film. Angel Studios, if you look at the pattern of Jeff Harmon and Neil Harmon, they started a company called the Harmon Brothers as an ad agency. They created viral videos to launch consumer products. And at one point, I don't know the exact stat, but some of the most viral videos in that space, the top 10 was like predominantly them in launching products like Squatty Potty or Poopery or Purple Mattress. If you go through, these are all products that have become incredibly significant. They created the videos and the work and for YouTube for that. And that launch could not have been more successful globally. And then they started. So they took that plus their tech work that they had done in other businesses, and they brought that into Angel. So being able to market and reach an audience and interact with an audience and have a conversation in testing. And actually, what I find unique about Angel and especially in the film theatrical space is a lot of people test what the audience wants and feels and reacts to, but they don't always end up going with the things that test the strongest with audience, meaning that there's still some aspirational components to like, well, this is what an audience should want. And this is what we think an audience should like as a poster, instead of like, no, it's pretty clear that they don't like my idea. They like something different. And so I think that marketing background, that tech background, the development stuff, all the stuff they've done with their app. And then when we came into the theatrical and we took that component of Pay It Forward that had been so successful for other shows, people would go on to our app before we launched the theatrical division. They could go into the app, they could click on a show to watch, whatever the show might be. And it would say, you're able to watch this episode for free because somebody's paid it forward. And it would give you the name of the person who's paid it forward. And then you finish the end of the show, and then you can say, they ask, the question is, would you like to pay it forward? And then you can pay it forward so other people can see the show, so the show can spread and go beyond and beyond. So with His Only Son, we launched Pay It Forward in theaters. That movie came out in March of this year. And then we kind of tooled it through that show. And then obviously Sound of Freedom was just a force of nature, and everything that we had implemented on other films and as a company over time and over the collective time of the people here running theatrical and distribution, our collective careers, like it just, everything was a wildfire. I mean, it just was like big and exciting and So, and then we're carrying on with that through all of our films with Pay It Forward, and it's been significant on each one of them.
Yeah. How did you become involved in Sound of Freedom? Because I understand the film had been available for a while, perhaps. I'm not sure.
Yeah. So the film, I think the film got kind of swallowed up in a couple things. I think, it's one of the films that got kind of caught in COVID kind of limbo. And again, I don't have all the details. The producers would have all the details, but it got caught up in that. And then it got caught up in acquisitions and mergers of different distribution companies. And then, when merging as a company and you both have a lot of media properties, it's quite a process to go through a catalog so significant and try to figure out what's our film, what's not our film, what fits our brand, what doesn't, what would we have acquired, what we wouldn't have. And so it got kind of hung up in that space. Obviously, the subject matter of that movie is difficult. And the intensity surrounding that movie was well known when they were making the movie. And so it sat there for a while, not because of the quality of the movie, but just because of circumstances. The producer ended up getting the film back out of that agreement and was able to bring back the rights into his company. And then there was an ongoing conversation between the producers of that film and Jordan Harmon here at Angel. And as we got ready to launch His Only Son and people saw what we were doing with pre-sales, a big pre-sales number for a film made for under $300,000, millions of dollars in pre-sales. There was some excitement and we started to work together. The fastest I've seen a deal that big come together, it was, weeks. We signed an agreement and The Sound of Freedom was trailered on the front of His Only Son when it opened on March 31st. So we were distributing it. We were looking at dates. This is another thing I love about Angel is that they identified that July 4th would be a great date. And I'm sitting in mid-April, and looking at July and looking at the slate. And I'm like, yeah, July 4th is a great, and the whole entire industry thinks so. But it really was a perfect date. And there was passion here in the executive team to go after that date and just absolute confidence that it would work. CinemaCon was coming up. And so I had been going to CinemaCon for 20 years. And I said, we have an opportunity here to be able to sell this film in a way where we can, I think with CinemaCon, and that kind of partnership with NATO, we'll be able to access the industry at a time where we can get the sales that, we can get that 3 or 4 months that we're not going to have to sell this film. We can make up for that in a week if we work aggressively. So we had hundreds of meetings, brought the team to Vegas to CinemaCon, and we debuted the trailer. We announced the date during a breakfast that we were speaking at, and theaters were on board. Obviously, it's a hard date, and there was huge films coming out. And then we launched our pre-sales, and pretty soon our pay it forward revenue before opening day was bigger than His Only Son's box office, and we were just. It was just going and going, and then it just became that process of us kind of handing the movie to the audience. Sometimes when you pass that to the audience, there's a slow, methodical, deep, introspective experience that the audience has, and sometimes it's just a raging river and a wildfire, and it just goes and goes, and there's just nothing you can do. And quite honestly, as a guy that loves cinema and film, probably the most spectacular experience of my entire career. It was wonderful.
Amazing, incredible. Tell me a bit more about Pay It Forward in the theatrical context. I just I know that you had you had that campaign. You also had messaging on the film itself. But if for an audience member, when they click on that Pay It Forward, they buy a ticket. How does that how does that then circulate into how can someone else claim that ticket, or how does that work?
Yeah. One of the fun things about Sound of Freedom is that anything and everything that happened became a good 2 weeks worth of controversy and debate, even if it was something as uncontroversial as people buying tickets for each other. But that's kind of the fun when a movie is just as big and as there's so much as impassioned as the audience was for this movie. So yeah, so I mean the in theater pay it forward process is people they watch the movie, they're at the end point of the movie where they're feeling, kind of contemplating the movie, thinking about it, feeling inspired. Those moments, as a person who tries to see every movie I can in theaters, I think we could probably identify that moment at the end of the movie where either you're like, I just wasted 2 hours, or I want 2 more hours of this movie. And there's a call to action, kind of a message comes up from either the director, producer, cast, somebody in the movie. They let the audience know kind of what the process is and where these funds go. And then they can scan a QR code and they can buy tickets for other people. So there's an average ticket price. They can select how many tickets they want to buy. And then they pay it forward. And then we have a redemption kind of side of our website where people can come to the website. They can request free tickets. On our site, they use those tickets just as you would buying a ticket anywhere. So the theater's not a part of that process except for they get the ticket sell, and to them it's a sell. So the box office component of that, the cinema component of that is it only goes towards box office once it hits the box office, once a ticket's been bought by an individual and they're going to the movie. So it's how many tickets are being bought for people and how many tickets are being redeemed. And at some point we've had to have, kind of an online wait list until more was paid forward, but it's been a really beautiful thing. And the theaters, obviously cinemas, they're hesitant to new things sometimes, and they were kind of questioning it. But once they saw the power of it and what it did to the box office and how it filled their theaters, every seat with people who were there watching the movie, buying concessions, enjoying the cinema, they've just been seriously the best partners. They've completely come on board, figuring out and strategizing how to more effectively work with us. And so, yeah, it's quick and easy in the theater. It's a scan and then you purchase and then you send it on and then people come on and can redeem them.
Amazing. And the redemption part, I'm just interested because we've done a lot of stuff with ticketing and redemptions at cinemas for special offers and tickets bought online. Is that a QR code they bring to the theatre and the theatre scans it? Is that how it works?
So as far as the redemption of the ticket, so they come to our site and they request a ticket, and they get an email with instructions, and through that they're able to click on a link and go to our ticketing page on Angel's website. For the shift, it's angel.com/the shift. And they go on there and they're coming from a specific link or a specific page for redemption. And they click on that link, they go in there, they select their tickets. And just like they were putting in a credit card or whatever, to buy the ticket, the process is seamless. So they select the showtime, they check out, and they get the same ticket like you would get if you're buying a ticket from Atom Tickets or Fandango or Cinemark or AMC, and they would then get those digital tickets and bring it in and scan it in. Like I said, it wouldn't look. When the theater receives the ticket that's purchased, it looks exactly like every other ticket they receive in the cinema for a movie.
Yeah, and then the cinema reports it, and it's it becomes it's marked as box office. Brilliant. If you are a film marketer or distributor, you understand the importance of making the purchase journey for the customer as easy and straightforward as possible. That's why at Usher U, we have developed the Usher U widget. Small yet mighty, this is a deceptively simple but powerful feature that can transform your campaigns. Compatible with any website, the widget delivers accurate cinema showtimes for your films, complete with those deep ticketing links for that seamless booking experience. Easy to install, no more manual uploading and updating of showtimes, just a clear consumer path to purchase, truly maximizing your marketing. Discover how the Usher U widget can elevate your marketing campaign by visiting usheru.com/widget today to learn more. And as a listener to the Movie Marketing and Distribution podcast, we've got a little something to get you started. Just use the code podcast25 for a 25% discount on your first widget order. So if you want to unleash the power of direct ticketing on your website today, just head over to usheru.com/widget. I will spell that. That is USHERU. That's usheru.com/widget. And don't forget to claim your exclusive 25% discount with the code podcast25. Tell me a bit about the audience that for Angel Studios, for Sound of Freedom and other titles. Tell me about what's how you would describe that audience and what's effective in terms of communicating with them and engaging them.
Angel Studios, Angel is for the angel investors, the people who are putting money into movies and having, becoming a part of that process. But really where it starts is there's what's called the Angel Guild. So at Angel Studios, no executive can greenlight a project. We don't have a traditional acquisitions team at all. So
really? Wow.
No, not
okay.
No. So there's a guild that has been developed, and that includes all the people who've invested in our shows. So tens of thousands of people, over 150,000 people who've invested in our shows, and is growing tremendously fast. And so they can come into the guild, and we have it set up through our app. You can also now watch the guild shows on your own TV, and you can vote on those shows. So there's two simple questions that are asked. You vote on the show, and if the show scores high enough, past a certain threshold, a really high threshold, then we take it to theaters. If it doesn't meet that threshold, even if we all love the movie, even if it's a household big name, producer, director, actor, then we don't distribute it. I've watched some movies that I would have loved to distribute come in, and the audience does not vote for it. So, for me, what I've seen a lot of my career is, like I said earlier, a lot of aspirational product development, kind of saying what should the audience want, which I think there's a place for that. And I don't think that the answer is to then just ask the audience, tell us what you want. But I think having the conversation with an audience where there's like loyal audience, committed audience based on a track record. Then when they look at the show and they vote on it, the feedback that we get from the guild is like, I can't be a Hollywood producer, and I'm probably not going to change careers at this point to be a film investor, but I can help select films. I can help fund films, and then I can enjoy those films in the theaters. So the guild is really the point where, and there's some really neat things with the guild. When you're a subscriber to it, when you have a membership in it, you get 2 free tickets to every movie that we put out. 2 free tickets to every movie that we put out. You get early access when it goes streaming. Yeah. So, I mean, you and then you're voting and deciding what content goes out into the Angel pipeline. So what goes into cinema is what, and what other, wherever they may end. But yeah, so that's the guild. It's super important. Once the guild is voted on a project, then there's some sort of campaign where we go into crowd equity funding. And there's a lot of nuance to that and a lot of language that I have to say just right. But when that happens, whether people are putting money in for the marketing and advertising, the P&A on the movie, they get a return on that investment. Or if they're putting money into a show, into the actual film or the TV series or whatever, that's the next component. So we definitely believe that when there's an ownership mentality versus kind of a subscription renting mentality, when they feel like they have ownership, that they're going to embrace those films differently. And so far it's been kind of spectacularly proven to be right. And so, they choose the movie, then it goes into funding. We've raised millions of dollars in under, 100 hours or less on some of our projects. The investors, and so then now the audience has selected it. They've chosen, does this amplify light? They want it to be made. They've now gone into funding. They've funded it. So the typical studio kind of goes to the cinema on opening weekend, just really hoping that they have an audience that's going to be significant and that it's going to. Yeah, I mean, I did it for years. You go in with lots of hopes. You look at a lot of signals. There's a lot of brilliant people in the film distribution space. But that opening day is a vulnerable moment. You're wondering what's going to happen. So what's neat about Angel in this ongoing conversation is while other studios might go to opening weekend to figure out if they have an audience, we're going with our built community of people who are fully invested in some level of ownership of this project, and we're showing up the theater together to celebrate. So that's why we have these pre-sales that, that have been significant on all of our films.
Wow, it's amazing. It's extraordinary, actually. You really are reinventing the way, the top-down model that's always existed with with film and distribution. Extraordinary.
And then furthermore, when people go to the cinema and watch the movie, at the end of the credits, anybody that's invested in the show, their name's in the credits, and they get all sorts of perks and early access to the show. And yeah, man, I mean, that when I talk about it, how exciting it is, and then I get videos that are kind of internal videos of people from the guild and the investors kind of talking about what it means to them. And like, people are so excited to be able to, instead of just saying, why doesn't Hollywood make any shows for us? It's like they ignore us. You hear that all the time from many different groups. So for them to be able to say, like, I get to choose what shows come out from a company that I trust, and then I get to be a part of making it happen even further with investment potentially, and then go watch it on opening weekend and kind of celebrate this idea as an investor. I mean, it brings out a whole bunch of emotions in these folks, people who've always wanted to work in film, but it didn't work out, and now they're being able to invest and fund, and movies like Sound of Freedom or His Only Son, or a number of other shows. So
yeah, and no doubt those people want to talk about it and tell other people about the films.
Exactly. If you own it, feel the ownership at that level, if you're a part of it, then when you go to the cinema, you're bringing your community with you, and you're encouraging people to see it at a different level than if you just love a movie,
Any projects which have been learning lessons along the way? I know you've only been there, so this year this has been it seems like hit after hit, Brandon, this year. But have there been any projects which have been more of a learning journey for the studios?
I think, so His Only Son was the 101st theatrical release that I had worked on in my career. I'd done volume, served micro markets with micro budget films, and did a lot of volume. So I think that, if you're doing it right, you're learning every time, whether it's Sound of Freedom or it's an indie hit. And I think actually you learn more on a Sound of Freedom than anything, because that's that in an independent film space from $10,000 to $2 million. You travel that space a lot in distribution if you do theatrical for very long, and hopefully you're having some that are some grand slams, some triples, some home runs. Like hopefully you're having some dynamics in the films that you're slating. Angel launched the theatrical division with me, bringing me on. So to have these 4 films come out this year, to be in the top distributors domestically here in the U.S., have a top 10 film, and then having acquired enough for a slate of almost a year and a half's worth of films for next year and the year after. We've learned a lot. It's a steep when you have a movie that runs away like that, the opportunity is so rich to be able to learn and to build and to just continually to build the foundation. Like we are really passionate here, and not just in our marketing and not just on panels and Q&As and podcasts, but we're like as I watch us with our filmmakers and the creators of the content, like we are very much committed to the audience, but equally committed to the storytellers. There's a lot of trust that I've never seen anywhere else in working with the filmmaker on the release of the project. Just really honoring that process. So yeah, it has been an exciting year, a year of lots of learning. We've built from the ground up. When I came on in February, January, February, we built from the ground up this theatrical division. Distribution was already rich. Jared Giese had been here for a long time. Michael Levy had been doing international work and distribution for Angel. The downstream revenues, the streamings, the DVDs, and all the different home media stuff. But launching that, so Angel really is Angel Studios. I believe because of its founders, is very much an environment that's super passionate about learning. So as we've built and built this division out, the team is just we have a spectacular team. We have an entire building of developers, web developers and engineers, and a spectacular marketing team. And so each film gets more and more fluid, and we put it out. But that DNA of having this relationship with the audience, having the marketing chops to be able to sell globally, and having the tech to be able to develop for scaling, that has been it's been amazing to be a part of. I've never had that kind of rocket fuel at my back when doing this distribution work. So lots of learnings. When you look at what we've released this year, we've released an Old Testament Bible film, His Only Son. We've released Sound of Freedom. a thriller, a trafficking thriller, a documentary about near-death experiences called After Death, and The Shift, a sci-fi faith romance kind of. And to me, this is what it should look like when you work with the audience on content. It should be a diverse slate. It shouldn't just be the same thing, the same note every single time. It should look like this. And so, yeah, I mean, you learn a lot on a doc when you go wide on a documentary. You learn a lot. You learn a lot when you take out a sci-fi indie movie like The Shift. But yeah, lots of learnings and lots of building. And our next year's slate is going to be aggressive. We're going to have six or more films that we put out theatrically. This year we put out 4. The following year we want to be 8 to 10, and we'd like to get to a space where we're releasing between 10 and 12 films theatrically a year. But we have some solid films. In 2025 in June we have an animated feature musical called David that's coming out, and $80 million budget film that's in production now. Spectacular music. People who watch clips and content, they compare it to a more current and modern animation technology version, but to the Prince of Egypt. And that movie is going to be it's a big film. And then we have Bonhoeffer coming at the end of next year. It's a World War II thriller, true story. But the big film that we have coming out next year in March is Cabrini, which is a story of a woman who came to America and to help with some of the situations that were happening early in the 1900s and addressing homelessness, poverty, and orphans and racism and sexism and kind of all the stuff that was swirling, and kind of rose up to be an icon. Mother Teresa was inspired by Cabrini in the mission of her journey through life. And so that's a big film. It's the same director as Sound of Freedom. It's Alejandro Monteverde, who's just a brilliant director from the same team. So we look forward to that in March. And then we have a whole slew of films in between. And I was hoping that we'd have contracts done on a handful of them so I could talk about it today. But we're still in the negotiation phase on a bunch of them. So
yeah, very, very exciting. And I think just going back to Sound of Freedom, I just want to make the point that people might think it was sort of it just took off, and then that was the you just let it go. But I know that as a distributor, when something takes off, you have to work even harder, and you have to really lean into it and be ambitious and have that confidence to go for it, because it could have been easy to say, we got 80 million. It's like, what a result that would have been. And it would have been a result. But yeah, so I just want to acknowledge that, because I think, that shows, I don't know, it's just remarkable, and just congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, it was interesting. When I came in the Monday, the movie opened on a Tuesday, July 4th. But when I came into the office that following, I guess it would have been Wednesday, the Wednesday after, the next day, I came in, and I'm used to being in this, business for a while. I thought I was going to walk in and we were all going to be celebrating together, this excitement. Honestly, I walked in and it was like walking into a 1920s newsroom. Everybody's running around working. Like, you wouldn't think that we just had the number one film in the country. They were like focused on like, okay, what's today? What's tomorrow? Like, how can we innovate? And that really didn't stop until that level of work and energy really didn't stop until September, because we released Latin America at the end of August, and then we were going into the UK before that. And so, I mean, it was fun to watch with a group of people who were new to theatrical distribution. And which I love about this place is that there's not a bunch of the industry kind of traditions. We can actually innovate and do new stuff, which I'm at a point in my career, which that's what I want to do. But yeah, just endless amounts of work. I mean, you would have thought that we had a film that was struggling in theaters based on the tone and the seriousness and kind of the work. So it's an exciting team to be a part of, and the slate's only growing, and our technology is only growing and developing, and our ability to track and sell and pre-sell tickets is just leaps and bounds. We just implemented some technology into our website, into our ticketing page, that we will be making an announcement about in a week, but is going to change the game for us transaction-wise. It's actually drastically improving conversion once people are to our sites for buying a ticket, and we're pretty good at that. So it's exciting. But again, none of this is possible unless we have theaters that are going to play ball with us, and they're going to play our films. They're going to hold the films and work with us. And globally, the exhibitors have been tremendous to work with on all of our titles. Luckily, Sound of Freedom really was able to put us into a whole bunch of the independent theaters. Our total run in the U.S. by the end was well over 4,000 locations, domestically, I should say, North America. But and then globally, it's been great. So the exhibitors have. What I love about exhibition is that when a movie works, they get behind it, and they don't say, I don't know I don't know about the controversy swirling in the world. They're there to show movies, to take care of audiences, and their audiences wanted the movie, and they responded to it. They held the film forever. We're still having some grosses domestically from day to day on that film. It's still in a handful of theaters. Globally, it's in a whole bunch of theaters in Latin America and Germany and France and different regions. But the exhibitors have been a great supporter of Angel Studios. So we look forward to a whole bunch more of that.
Are you bullish about Theatrical? It's been well, you've obviously helped quite significantly with Sound of Freedom, but the box office has improved, but it's still not back to where people wanted it to be. How do you see things going forward?
I feel like sometimes, just like everything in our world right now, we're, instead of thinking about like what's the story and what's the industry and how does this affect people, like we're so committed to clicks, we're so committed to views, that sometimes we tell these sensational stories about everything, and including the cinema. But when I turn around and I look back on the history of cinema and film, theatrical film experience, I feel pretty confident. It's not a good bet to bet against the cinema industry. So it rises up and it continues to go, and it takes its hits. Coming out of COVID, trying to rebound, just starting to get the big chops and growing, and then the strike hits, and then the strike's over, and now there's a pipeline thing. But this is an innovative industry who's committed. Not only the film production folks, the distributors and studios, but the theaters. I mean, I've been able to go around to a handful of major trade shows, from Show East to Lake Geneva, the Rocky Mountain NATO convention. I've been able to be at them and to sit and listen to the theaters and how much work the owners and how much innovation and how they're trying to find local content that they can show on the weekends or in the gap days. and then looking at the content that's coming, like this year, the concert films, the Sound of Freedom, these films that came in and lifted up, and they say, well, boy, they're lucky that they had that film this year. But it seems to happen most years. There are innovators in the space that want the cinema is needed culturally, but business-wise, and there's nothing that replicates it. So I'm, good luck on getting me to ever feel not optimistic about the cinemas or about this business. Like this industry is important to me, and I really do. The more I meet with theater owners, and the more I meet our fans and audience here at Angel, the people who invest in our shows, I feel so much optimism for cinema and for film, and for being able to put movies out that amplify light. Movies that there is a space for that people do want those films, and they're passionate about it. And I think that is a huge majority of the movie-going people in the U.S. And I think the box office bears that out when the films that touch kind of a divine spark of some level. It doesn't have to be religious. It doesn't have to be a faith film, but just some sort of inspirational film, something that shows us our human condition and how to overcome. People support those films, and there's so many stories to be told. There's so many brilliant storytellers. Only a fraction of their content gets to the big screen. And I just think that the more space there is, because there's a lull in, say, studio content, Hollywood content, innovators step up and make films, and films that would never get to the big screen wide get to the big screen wide. And now you got more filmmakers in the space. You got more studios in the space. You got more diversity of content coming from different places. When I look at the box office and I see what Animal is doing in the U.S. On such a few screens, I believe in micro audiences. I served smaller audiences for a lot of years, and niche audiences are the power. It's the symphony. The symphony of the niche audience is underestimated, and so I feel super hopeful. And when I meet with theaters, I'm not getting an ounce of fear or concern. They're just digging in and saying, like, what's the content going to be? What's next? They're trying to get us to move our dates to better dates for them. And, it's just, there's a lot of ambition and a lot of optimism, and the strikes slowed things down, but I think it's a speed bump. And I think that next year is going to have big hits and underperforming films for all studios, this is going to be the normal roller coaster, but I think it's a roller coaster spiral upward. And I think we'll be back to that pre-COVID number. And my hope is that we stop saying pre-COVID number and we start just saying, let's just pretend like those years didn't happen. And let's just say, how are we going to grow from 2019? And and I think we're on our way there. Have been having conversations with Mitch Newhouser from CinemaCon and different folks from NATO, and the leadership that's happening there in the Independent Cinema Alliance, Rich Dottridge. When I look at the leadership and the innovations that they're doing with marketing and bringing in content for their local communities, we're in a good place.
Wow, that sounds like a good place to wrap things up. Brandon, it's been great. Thank you so much for taking the time, sharing, a little bit about what under the hood of Angel Studios is super inspiring and innovative. And congratulations on an amazing 23, and very best of luck for next year.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I feel grateful to be here.
You've been listening to the Movie Marketing and Distribution Podcast, powered by UsherU. If you want to know more about how UsherU can transform your marketing and distribution, just head over to usheru.com, or why not drop me an email at alex@usheru.com. But in the meantime, thank you again for listening, and look forward to welcoming you back on the podcast very soon.